Indonesia Study Group. To those who come here in person and to those online, we're very happy to have Dr. Hilman Palawan from Lowy Institute today to talk about digitizing social protection system. I want to start by acknowledging and celebrating the first Australians on whose traditional lands we meet and pay our respect to the elders past, present, and emerging. Again, today is a hybrid event, so we already have some people online now, and we'll be taking questions from both in-person audience and online. Those online can write their question in the Q&A box, and we will read them out as during the Q&A. Dr. Hilman Palawan here, we're happy to have him, and he's from Lowy Institute, Sydney, and he has an extensive experience in Indonesia, particularly in advancing the financial inclusion agenda and digitizing social protection programs during his tenure at TNP2K, the Vice President Office of, which was under the Vice President Office of the Republic of Indonesia. It's a national team for the acceleration of poverty reduction. He also served as the VP of Financial Services and Inclusion at Gojek GoTo in Indonesia. And in 2016, 2017, when I was about to do, we were about to do a large-scale survey on digitizing social protection and also harmonizing all those kind of digital banking, digital wallet. We would always invite Pak Hilman to come to explain all these things which are very new to us, to the enumerators, to everyone. So he's the expert on this topic. So we're very happy to have you. You have for about 45 minutes to. Thank you. Thank you, Hilman.
Thank you, everyone, for the kind interactions. Good day, everyone. I would like to express my gratitude to the Indonesia Study Group at the ANU for this opportunity in presenting about the digitizing social protection system as a lesson learned from Indonesia as a case study. So my presentation, I will divide it into 3 sections for today's presentation. One is about the background. So I would highlight about what is social protection. So for somebody that's really new about social protection, I would like to highlight about what is this, what is the characteristic of the social protection, what are the examples of this kind of programs for social protection. And then after that, how to digitize the social protection system. And also, finally, what kind of social protection system that available in Indonesia in terms of budgeting and also the programs. The next section is the second section about the journey. This is the journey about Indonesia in transforming their digitizing social protection system. Starting, what is the objectives of the government? Why the government would like to change from the traditional mechanism into the digitized mechanism? And also, how is the journey happening? What kind of support from the central government, local government, and also other stakeholders in succeeding this kind of transformation or reform in digitizing social protection in the country? And finally, digital solutions. What kind of digital solution that have been tested in Indonesia? Then the final section is about the future. I would like to highlight about the new development, the current condition in Indonesia, and also the incoming initiatives, whether by the current government and also for the incoming government. And also the distribution roadmap, what kind of roadmap that Indonesia have already established in the future of digitizing social protection system. Let's begin with the background. So here, I would like to highlight about the characteristic and the programs of the social protection system, the building blocks itself of the social protection systems, and the disbursement process, how the benefits or services delivered from the government until to the beneficiaries of the social protection programs, and also what are the advantages and challenges of a government in digitizing social protection system. Next, the budget allocation in Indonesia. How big is social protection allocated inside the government budget? And also finally, the beneficiaries. Who are the beneficiaries of social protection programs in Indonesia? If you're talking about social protection, in the middle, we can see the characteristic of the program. So usually social protection designed for targeted beneficiaries. It could be for low-income people or individuals, low-income families, or maybe some people with disabilities or the elderly. So it should be targeted. The second one, the characteristic usually is direct assistance. So the benefits or services provided directly to the beneficiaries. And the third one is aim to have the for impact to the poverty alleviation. Next one is increasing the social inclusion among the people in the country. And next one is also for economic stability, especially during the crisis. So the government can provide the financial support for the people during this crisis. And finally, it's also the characteristic using the humanitarian responses, like the pandemic and also the climate change in the future. The programs, we can see from the outside of the light blue here, the programs could be several types of programs or benefits that can be transferred through the social protection programs, such as the cash transfer. This is like direct cash transfers from government directly to the beneficiaries. It can be conditional, which must be like conditional, such as only for the pregnant woman, or maybe families with kids, or unconditional for everyone. And also social security, such as the unemployment benefits, the support for disability, and also retirement for the elderly, for the pensions. It could be also in the form of social assistance, like food aid, food support, food voucher, or other welfare benefits, and healthcare subsidies, like insurance for healthcare, for insurance healthcare premiums that get paid by the government, and also other medical services provided by government for free for the specific individuals. Next one is about, it could be the programs like maternal and also child support. This is ensuring the pregnant women, for instance, and ensuring children can get nutrition food. The next one is, of course, education. Government provide grants and scholarship for the students. The next one also can support the employment, like providing job training, upskilling, and also job channeling to the employees or to the companies. Elderly support, it can be in the terms of pension, social care services, or home assistance for the elderly. And housing, in Indonesia, they have like tax exemptions for specific groups, or maybe housing supports in credit housing. Energy and utilities, such as the subsidies for electricity, subsidies for fuel. In Indonesia, also subsidies for cooking gas. And some part of the country also have like the water bills. Agricultural, this could be like the specific sector for the agriculture, like for the farmers, like providing subsidies for fertilizer, price support, and also access to the credit for the farmers. And finally, the program could be like disaster relief during the disaster relief and emergency, like providing assistance during natural disasters or emergencies. These are the characteristics and also sample of programs of social protections. When we are building the social protection, there are several building blocks that we need to wear. Number one is starting from the government. So the government need to have the policy to supporting the social protection system and the programs. And after that, the government also need to allocate the budget how to deliver this program, and also to design how to design this program, whether it's for individual, whether for specific region, whether for specific targeted beneficiaries, and also how to deliver the program, whether in cash, in benefits, in kind, or in terms of in services. And after that, the government also need to have the database. Number one is national ID, national identity system, that ensuring that everyone that's like recorded inside the government under this national ID database, and also the social registry. So this is like the database of the social economic status of the people. After that, the database also should include the enrollment process, how to enroll the targeted beneficiaries into to being part of the beneficiaries of the social protection programs. The next one is about the provider. So the provider is, if this non-cash like transfer, the government need to collaborate or need to appoint with the banks or with other financial services institution, or if it's in kind, maybe government can appoint it state-owned enterprises or maybe private sectors. And the payment system inside the country should have the reliable payment system to disbursing the fund from the government to the intermediaries, such as the banks, and up to the beneficiaries. So we will focus on this for this today discussion. And also the transaction points. The providers should appoint where transaction points, whether it's in the banks, whether it's ATMs, whether in the village office, whether is there any potential targeted like transaction point like for health services like the hospital or other kind of supports. And finally, the beneficiary itself, how the social protection can disburse to the targeted beneficiary. It could be like finally the beneficiary also need to cash out and conducting the transaction of the to have the benefits and all services. In the middle, the continuous progress is like reporting the overall disbursement mechanism, and also monitoring the programs, and finally evaluation to providing the future improvement needed by the government. Here is the process when the government would like to deliver the social protection programs. The stage is starting with the government after they decided the policy, allocated the budget, appointed implementing agency, and also targeting beneficiaries, and finally conducting the enrollment. So the government finished with this kind of task, and also decided who are the service providers. Whether it's with the benefits or services need to deliver in cash, non-cash, using vouchers, in-kind or goods, or services, or maybe subsidies. So the government need to design and appoint this kind of entities. It could be, again, state-owned enterprises, maybe NGOs, or maybe private companies. And the disbursement points for the cash out for the benefit delivery could be cash out in the bank or ATM, payment like paying at the shop, commercial shop, retail commerce, service outlets, and also maybe need to deliver directly to the house of the beneficiaries, such as for the disabled people or for the elderly. So the beneficiary could be individual, could be family or household, elderly, disabled people, community, or students. Besides of that, the government need to ensure what I call it the supporting infrastructure. So number one is the regulation should be there, the national ID, the social registry, digital infrastructure, the digital literacy, ensuring that the beneficiaries understand about the digital solution that would like to introduce by the government, and also the payment system, usually led by the central bank of the country. At the bottom, this is like the continuous progress, like reporting, monitoring, evaluation of the program. The process in digitizing social protection have like three main advantages or benefits in this regards. Number one is in terms of the operational benefits. After the government can digitize the disbursement of social protection, they can have like more efficiency and cost savings in terms of delivering the social protection programs to the beneficiaries. The next one is ensuring the accuracy of the targeted beneficiaries. Third one is in terms of the operational, so increasing the transparency and accountability of the program itself. Finally, it also aims to being for fraud prevention, so for corruption, avoiding for the potential corruption of the country. The spin-off benefit, somehow the social protection is like one of the requirement is the beneficiaries will have the national identity, national ID. So it's like increasing the formal identities of the individuals in the country. When it's the social protection disbursing through the financial services, like opening the formal financial services, it is also somehow increasing the financial inclusion index. And the digital inclusion, when the people understand how to use the digital services, so the digital inclusion of the beneficiaries, the low-income population also increased. And finally, is for gender equality, ensuring that women also have the participation in the social protection programs. In the macro level, of course, it's for the alleviating of poverty and for the economic resilience during the crisis and public trust when the programs can deliver transparently and can be monitored by public, so public can be more trust by to the government. And finally, for political stability of the country. This is three of the main benefits of digitizing social protection programs. So, but in terms of the benefit, there's also challenges when the government would like to digitize the payment system, the social protection system. So the challenges came before the implementation and after the implementation. So before the implementation, the government need to ensure the availability of the digital infrastructure in the country. So digital infrastructure could be like ATM, whether ATM is available, whether bank branches available in the country, or whether the telecommunication network is available in the country. And also the digital divide among the population. How is the digital divide? Whether the people is already getting used to using the smartphone for doing payment or doing several services, or still need the traditional mechanism. And digital literacy and skills. How is the illiterate of the people in terms of the digital understanding? And the resistance to change. Usually some of the government officials, or especially the government official working at the regional level or the rural or the village level, they cannot they afraid that they will lose their job once it's once the system being digitized. This is like the resistance from them. and also somehow the government feel already convenient with the traditional system. And finally, they need the political policy support by the central government in conducting the reform to the digitized system. After the government successfully digitizing the social protection system, there is emerging challenges. First is the data protection and cybersecurity. How the government can ensure the data that collected by from the beneficiaries is like safe, and also like avoiding the potential data breaches in the future. And also the next, integration and interoperability. So for instance, the social protection is run by social protection programs run by several ministries. So how to integrate this in the future, and run by several service providers. How among service provider can have like interoperability of their system. The next one is the sustainability and maintenance. Once it's digitized, the government needs to spend allocated like budget, how to maintain the system. And not to forget, finally, usually the system is provided by third-party service providers. So how the government also need to ensure the third-party providers management, and also not to really rely on them. Once have something happening to them, like from the company, what government can do. So this is like big risk mitigation that required by the government. Let's dive into Indonesia condition. We are talking about the budget of in Indonesia. Based on the data in the 2023, Indonesia have total state expenditure is around 198 billion US dollar. So from this total, 27% is transferred to the region. So it's like for the provinces, so they can have their own programs. And the other 73% is run by the central government. So if we zoom into the 73%, this is the elaboration of the budget allocated in terms of the functions or ministries in Indonesia. We can see the social protection here itself, in terms of the functions, is already allocated for 11% of the total budget. But if we dive in more details from this budget, we can see social protection programs can run in other functions. For instance, under the economy. So for the job skilling, upskilling, and also providing credit for the micro, small, medium enterprises and run under the economy. And the next one is also under the education. There are several social protection programs under the education, like the grants and also scholarship for students. In health also, there is social protection programs like insurance for paying the premium for the allocated for the low-income beneficiaries, and housing and public facilities, and not to forget also in the religion for supporting the religious education in the country. So it's like only social protection that could be spread in several ministries. They have their own programs in supporting the dedicated targeted beneficiaries in low-income population. Talking about the social protection program itself, based on the realization in 2022, the total state expenditure spent for the overall social protection is around 16%. So if we dive in about what are the social protection programs in the country, the biggest one is located for the energy subsidies. This could be like electricity subsidies. The targeted is like 39.2 million customers. And the cooking gas, or in Indonesia, they call it 3 kilogram LPG. Subsidy is targeted for 3.3 million metric tons. And the fuel subsidy. The fuel subsidy is like basically targeted on specific fuel type. The next one is the non-energy subsidies, is such as the fertilizer for the crops fertilizer for the farmers, and also the credit programs, and some public service obligation. After that, also Indonesia have the reserve for expanding social protection and natural disasters. So usually this is like the reserve budget that usually can use by the government, for instance, during the pandemic. So Indonesia, the government can use this kind of budget to deliver the other social protection that may need it by the country. The national health insurance is like covering 96.7 million recipients currently. Food assistance or groceries card is like now targeted 18.7 million families. Village direct cash assistance is around 8 million families. And family help program, one of the conditional transfer for the women, and now expanded to the beneficiaries of the elderly and also the people with disabilities, around 9.8 million families. And finally, for the education related, they call it Smart Indonesia program, is targeted 17.9 million school students. So these are the programs, the main social protection programs in the country. Who are the target beneficiaries? In Indonesia, the government already have, they call it the Data Terpadu Kesejahteraan Sosial or Unified Social Protection Beneficiaries Database. So this is somehow the Indonesia's social registry. It's covering the 40% of the bottom of the pyramid, 40% of the families and individuals. And currently, the database is run or managed under the Ministry of Social Affairs. Somehow it has the intention to be like the single source of database for the future of social protection programs in Indonesia. So about the targeted beneficiaries, if we deep dive into the 40% of the bottom of the pyramid, we understand that currently the poverty line in Indonesia, based on the data in 2023, is around 9.4%. But somehow, the social protection programs, the covering is like more than that. So for instance, we are up to 25%, like food assistance, Family Hope program, and Smart Indonesia program, covering this kind of families and individuals, like up to 25% from the bottom of the pyramid. And also, if we're talking about the other social protection programs, like energy subsidies is covering up to the 40% of the individuals of the population. Also the health insurance and the housing subsidies is up to the 40% of the population. And one of the the social protection program focusing on the pre-employment, like upskilling for the job opportunities, they call it the program Kartu Prakerja. It's also covering like more than 40% of individuals. So everyone can apply for this program. Now we're entering the journey. How is the journey of Indonesia when digitizing the social protection? One is the objectives of the government, why the government would like to digitize the social protection system, and how is the reform has been made, how is the progress, and what kind of digital solutions that government have tested and implemented in the country. And finally, I would like also highlight the crucial things is about pilot projects in designing the country-centric solutions, and also come up with the evidence base in terms of the policy reform in the country. Let's start with the reform objectives. Indonesia government has like one, they call it the policy or commitment in terms when delivering the social protection program, they call it 6 rights or 6 tepat in bahasa. So number 1 is right target, meaning that the program should be right on targeting beneficiaries. Number 2 is right price, meaning the disbursement process should be monitored and should be cost savings and ensuring the price. The third one is the right quantity. So the amount should be right. So for instance, the government delivered 10 kilograms of rice. In the design, it should be delivered to the beneficiaries 10 kilograms, not less than that. Then in terms of the money, if the government give like 200,000 rupiah, should be received by the beneficiary 200,000, not less than that. In terms of the quality, it should be right quality. So for instance, the quality of food that delivered for this program should be good quality. The right administrations, meaning the government need to ensure the administration that started from designing the program until the delivery, it should be like transparent and also manageable and can ensure that there is no potential corruption happening during the disbursement of the program. Finally, right time, meaning right time in here is like ensuring the benefit is reaching the beneficiaries at the right time when they need it. And the other objectives that the government would like, why the Indonesian government would like to digitize the system, based on the studies from and also the literature reviews from other countries, the digitization of social protection program can increase the efficiency and also the accountability of the government. So the system in this regard, the system should be responsive, cost effective, and also maximize the impact for the beneficiaries. The second one, it's also increasing the transparency and public trust. Eradication of corruption, this is the most important thing that government would like to achieve. The technology adaptations, you see how the Indonesian government would like to optimize the use of technology in disbursing the social protection using the most advanced or innovative solutions. The next one is also Indonesia has the agenda in terms of the financial inclusion. Government would like to expand the access of formal financial services to low-income individuals. Finally, South-South cooperation. So during this the Jokowi cabinet, the cabinet has initiatives to be like let's create Indonesia as like new lab for testing several innovative solutions, and also how to share the result or also the lesson learned to other countries. So social protection programs, one of the program that initiated that let's test it everything in Indonesia, and let's create the lesson learned and let's disseminate in other countries. So maybe we can also advocate for the future social protection digitization in other countries. The reform strategy. This is I would like to highlight the new cabinet or new government is the good gateway or entrance in introducing or advocating for the new reform. This case is about the digitizing social protection program. When Pak Joko Widodo appointed as an Indonesian president in 2014, his first agenda he called at that time is like 100 days after the Jokowi become the president. He delivered the social protection program using two of digital innovations. One is savings account, and the other one is mobile money, meaning like using your mobile number. So when beneficiary have mobile number, they deliver the money using the mobile number. It's on the picture on the left there. So it's like in October 2014, just after almost 1 month after he appointed as the president, he launched this program. At that time, it's not a new program. The program is already there. So the cabinet also changed the innovative mechanism of the disbursement. So the budget is already there, program is already there, and also beneficiaries are already there. So the government already like reform the initiatives. So if you can focus there, this guy, it's like the younger version of me back to 10 years ago. Like I was appointed to lead this kind of initiative in the beginning. And after that, also during the Jokowi era, Jokowi also introduced, they call it the Tiga Kartu Sakti or magic card. Basically, so at that time in 2014, it's only like identity card. So they have 3 cards. The red one is like, they call it the Prosperous Family Card, or in bahasa Kartu Keluarga Sejahtera, is for the family of the beneficiaries of social protection program. The blue card is like the cabinet called it the Smart Indonesia card. It's like for the students. And also the green one is the Health in Indonesia card. So that is the identity for the person that having the support from the government for in terms of paying premium for the health services for the insurance. So this card basically what in stages like transforming from the identity become the more advanced in the future. The card still happening until today. It still exists, but especially the red one. In 2014, it's only plastic card, but now it's become a debit card. I will explain later. So the journey. In 2014, the top-down approach, this is the key crucial of Indonesia, should be a top-down approach. Initiated by the president in reforming the social protection programs, and president appointed the vice president to coordinate the reform. So by having this kind of approach, so the country can ensure the priority agenda of this kind of reform. The next one is collaboration. So the government cannot do it alone. So in Indonesia, there are several supports that provided by banks, telecommunication operators, post office, technology startups, and fintech in designing and also introducing the new solution in terms of the disbursement mechanism. And also not to forget international donors and institutions also chip in. They provided like not only financial assistance, but also lesson learned from other countries that can be tailored with Indonesia conditions. The next one, the cross-government collaboration. The key crucial in Indonesia was the government, especially the central bank, would like to relax the regulations during the pilot projects. So for instance, when the government delivered the new mechanism when there was not available for the regulation yet, or the policies that exist yet. So the central bank or relax, okay, you can do it, but only for the pilot projects purposes only. So by that kind of thing, so Indonesia is open. So anything that you can try, but only for the pilot, you can do it. So after that, if the government see this is like the good mechanism and also potential for the future implementation, then government will continue to create the supporting policy or regulations. And also Indonesia conduct the Ministry of Home Affairs, who is the who managing the the national ID or database also open the access. So the bank service providers can have access directly to the national ID database to enroll the beneficiaries. And Indonesia also introduced the eKYC, a know your customer, during the enrollment process. Instead of like having like face-to-face, they conduct it using the digital devices, like using the smartphones for capturing the face, and also the fingerprint for capturing the fingerprint, fingerprint using the smartphone for capturing the fingerprints. And bulk savings account openings, like meanings like the government can just give the total beneficiaries complete with the data, the basic data for KYC, like the name, address, date of birth, and other supporting data to the service providers like banks, and banks can directly like bulk opening the savings account for those beneficiaries. So there's no need for one-on-one meetings and one-on-one face meeting with the beneficiaries in terms of opening the savings account. The second one, after the collaboration, also need to ensure the country-centric. The country-centric is meanings like when the government would like to introduce the new mechanism or new digital solution, they need to ensure about the socio-economic condition in the country, the cultural aspects, the political condition, regulatory landscapes, and also the available service providers in the country. Not to forget also whether the digital infrastructure is supporting enough to conduct this kind of reform. Pilot projects is a good one to control environment on testing the digital solutions tailored to Indonesia-specific needs. So meaning like not every solution like succeed in other countries. Like when we are talking about the social protection, maybe Africa, like Kenya and other countries in developing countries in Africa have succeeded in several digital solutions such as mobile money. It's not potentially 100% success in Indonesia. That's why the government need to test it first before they decided to implement the solution nationwide. Finally, in 2017, after the long journey, the president decided to support the regulation by providing the presidential decree about the non-cash distribution of social assistance programs. So since 2017, the disbursement of the social protection programs in terms of the cash disbursement now should be like transferred through digital solutions, such as through savings account or mobile money or electronic vouchers or other digital wallets. And the implementation is not directly like, okay, we agreed, we implement it. No, the implementation should be like in stages based on the readiness of the region. Whether it's the one region is ready in terms of the digital infrastructure, the digital literacy of the people. So the government will decide. So we'll start in a specific region, in a specific provinces, and continue after the other provinces are ready. I would like to highlight about the pilot project that have been conducted from 2016 to 2020, like Firman earlier mentioned in the beginning. So in 2016, 2017, government of Indonesia tested the digital payment solutions. So they tried every kind of solutions, started from mobile money, bank account, QR code, NFC, whatever the innovative solution available, the government just tried to pilot it. In 2017 and 2018, because of the insight, like the commercial shops in the rural and urban areas can be a potential transaction points for these disbursing social protection programs. Government would like to know more about what are the challenges, and also from this kind of shops, if they will be appointed as the transaction points for disbursing social protection program. In 2018, 2020, the biometric authentication tested in Indonesia. It's included like face recognition and also fingerprint. So the things that Indonesia, when conducting the pilot project, they need to ensure it covered like the specific regions, like not only in one region, but need to ensure the west part, the central part, and also the east part of the countries, because need to understand the social, cultural barriers in the region, and also the digital infrastructure barriers and other barriers that may happen. So it's like should be spread like this. These are the digital solutions that tested by Indonesia from 2014 to 2017. Number one is debit card. Basically, debit card is like debit card that we have a plastic card, which is have like access to the savings account. And also the beneficiaries can purchase or at the shop using debit card, or maybe cashing out the money, withdraw of the money at ATM or bank branches. The second one is mobile money. Mobile money is like the mobile number as account number of beneficiaries. So the government transfer the money directly to the mobile number of the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries did not require a smartphone, so the normal cell phone is working. So in this picture, we can see this is like normal cell phone. It's not smartphone. So the beneficiary received the information that beneficiaries withdraws the money 110,000 at this agent at this date. So like the SMS, the notification in terms of SMS. So it's notified the beneficiaries that he or she did the transaction already. And the third one is the near field communication, like a tap. Maybe in here in the camera, we can see we tap in our public bus for public transportation. So the NFC, like at that time, we are using like the sticker, the sticker NFC, and tap to the smartphone of the agent, which is the act as a transaction point. So beneficiaries gave, government gave to the beneficiaries the chip for the NFC, and they tap it, and every transaction just tap. And also the PIN, the security is under the PIN, so beneficiaries need to put the PIN when they receive the notification to their cell phone. The next one is QR code, basically QR payment, like beneficiaries have the specific QR, government give the QR and QR the scan, and beneficiary can conduct the transaction. The combo card is come with the solution in Indonesia finally. Based on this palette, government decided debit card is the best solution for the country compared to others. And inside the debit card, the government initiated they call it combo card. So combo card is one debit card for several kind of programs. Could be for food program, cash transfer programs, other programs. If you imagine the debit card, there are several programs transferred to this debit card. Inside this debit card system, there's like several digital wallet. So wallet A for the program A, wallet B for program B, wallet C for program C, and also a link to the savings account. So when the beneficiaries did not need the money, cash out the money, they can transfer the money to the savings account. But in 2018, after the implementation, we found out that debit card complete with PIN. So this is a potential fraud. It's like stack of debit cards. When I went to the shops, commercial shops in the rural areas, stacks of debit cards like complete with pins there, and one EDC that reading the debit card and conduct the transaction also there. So it feels like it's not secure enough, so everyone can do transaction. If you have debit card with pins, they can do transaction. So this is another potential reform that the country need to do. That's why the country need to do the biometric authentication as a potential reform. It's piloted in 2018 to 2020. Besides the fraud of debit cards, and also we found out the beneficiaries have difficulties in remembering the PIN. So that's why how we can, the government can have like new solution, innovative solution, like convenient with the beneficiaries. Using their face and using their fingerprint, we tested the program. So the government recorded the face of the beneficiaries and also the fingerprint act as a security code, like this kind during this pilot, like act as like converting for the pins into the biometric authentication. So they just came, didn't bring anything, just bring face and finger transaction. Again, another findings during the biometric authentication, when we captured the picture of the beneficiaries, and those pictures we use it to the apps of the reading the biometric, it works. It was working. So we said, oh no. So meaning like the two dimension of the photograph is can read by the system. So at that time, government asked the technology provider, let's do the liveness detection. So meaning the beneficiaries, they doing something like moving his or her head, or blinking, or smiling. So that ensure that this is the real beneficiaries conducting the transaction. Finally, the future and also Indonesia development agenda. The progress in Indonesia, the new initiatives, digital payment roadmap, so the new program for the new incoming cabinet in 2024. If we can see the progress of Indonesia in elevating poverty is quite good. You can see it based on the data in 2023, the extreme poverty now reaches only 1.5% of the population, which is the Indonesia target in 2024 is like 0% of extreme poverty. Some of the team said it could be achievable, or at least maybe can last to 0.5% by the end of this year for extreme poverty. And also the next one is the financial inclusion. The Indonesian government targeted 90% of adults in the country have access to the formal financial services. But we can see this, that the challenge in financial is like the financial literacy index is still low. It's only 50% based on the data in 2022. So the government now collaborated with the education sectors and also the technology provider, how they can also educate the people in achieving in increasing the financial literacy index. This is the future agenda. First is like government would like to leverage the scope and access of the social protection programs. Number one is universal social protection, meaning like every citizen have like access to the basic social protection programs. The next one is also the knowledge the gig workers like and also the workers in non-traditional sectors. So how we can ensure that they also can be part of the beneficiaries of social protection programs. And also try to tailor the programs with climate change issues. Next one is adopting graduation strategy. So government aware that maybe one of the families already enjoy the social protection programs more than 5 or 10 years. So they need to ensure how this beneficiary can graduate, not receiving any more support from the governments. So like maybe providing the more productive economic programs, providing the credit for businesses or entrepreneurship. And also conducting a recertification initiative, like ensuring that every specific years, government need to recertify again the enrollment of beneficiaries. Need to ensure they are still entitled to be part of the beneficiary of social protection programs. The next one is try to promote the program integration, whether among ministries or whether among different social protection programs. The next one, in terms of the system, implementing interoperability and beneficiary-centric design, meaning focusing on the beneficiaries. What is their preferences? So for instance, they prefer to get the benefit through their savings account, or in Indonesia now very happenings, we call it the electronic money account, whether they prefer using electronic money account, or maybe in terms of the benefits, maybe they are farmers, they already have rice, so they don't need rice. Maybe they need something else for supporting their family, maybe like meats or something else. So like this kind of initiative. This is the overall roadmap for the in terms of the payment system in Indonesia. They call it government to person payment 4.0 roadmap. This is like the initiative led by the Bappenas, the National Planning Agency, the TNP2K, and supported by the World Bank, SIGAP, with the support from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation at the time. So this is like how the Indonesia can transform to be like more interoperable and also more digitized social protection system in the future. But the current challenges I highlighted with the stars there, the government is like have difficulties in developing the central mapper. Central mapper basically like focusing like a centralized database among ministries. So the ministries can access only to this database. Like this is powerful, like link with other things, like link to the saving, what are they saving account, what are the social economic status, and link with other potential. This is the problem, appointing the central mapper and also designing, developing the central mapper itself. Finally, my last discussion is about the incoming cabinet. So you may aware that the new cabinet, after the announcements, said that they would like to have like a free lunch program. But my main concern in this regard is that need to consider and also need to be prepared by the incoming government is like the supporting policy is not available yet. So government need to make the new policy and also regulation for supporting this initiative. Who is the implementing agency? Whether need to appoint the specific ministry or specific service providers? And how about the budget? Where the budget come from? Whether take from other budget allocated in other social protection programs? And who are the beneficiaries? How to target the beneficiaries? Not to forget the service providers, it could be like a lot. Food, drinks, regions. What the service providers can cover this kind of initiative. The next one is how to deliver it, whether the deliver it in the school, to home directly, or maybe like in the village office or specific location. And not to forget is the potential risk that may arise for this kind of program, maybe to ensure the audit trails of during this implementation, the quality standards of the food that given by the government, and also the potential of the new corruption maybe can be happening. So I will stop here, and I look forward to your questions and future discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hilman. a very good comprehensive review of our digital social protection system and historical overview of how we Indonesia got to this point. We're going to open this Q&A sessions. I'm going to start with 3 questions, collect 3 questions in the room. Greg, Steve, and another one. We can, and yes, okay, Greg.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm very interested. I wanted to ask, you said that one of the objectives of the digitisation was to have greater accountability and transparency. How much has digitisation improved that? Has it reduced corruption or abuse of the social protection payment? Because we sometimes read in the newspapers that there are grandmas who get hold of the cards at the village level and get the money, or the local officials do this same kind of thing. So has there been much improvement in the delivery of social protection to the target audience rather than to all sorts of people who are exploiting the system? So has it worked?
Yeah. Thank you. Let me answer this first. Okay. Thank you, Greg, for the questions. Yeah, if I may say, it's not the 100% for ensuring, especially in terms of the corruption. I did the survey before the system digitized. I went to one of the post office at the time. In the 2014, I just give a case for to explain this. The government provide the cash assistance, like delivering directly cash to the beneficiaries through post office. So post office can be, the transaction point can be in the post office or maybe appointed in somewhere else, like somewhere, if the post office is very far from the villages, so maybe they can point it somewhere else. So, but bring the money there, bring the actual money there, the physical money there. The findings, number 1, when I went there, I just sit there during the disbursement process. I'm not wearing batik like the Indonesian official, just trying to be local. I sit down there. A lot of people came there, and I just try to understand how is the process. So the process, like entering when the people arrive, there's a like manual checking, administration checking. Where's your ID card? And what number? Sign there. Okay, you sign. Continue to the next checking, and until they can get the benefits. If I'm not mistaken, it was like the money. Maybe I'm wrong. It's like around 200,000 rupiah. So when the beneficiaries approach to the transaction point to get the money, the operators at the time just give here, and I just see that's the progress. And after that, the beneficiary took the money and said, "Thank you, Pak. Thank you, book." Just left. And I tried went to this beneficiary asking the discussion. We try to understand how much money did they get. 150, Pak. It's like, oh my God. Any receipt? No, Pak. Oh, it's enough for us. So they didn't know. When they came there, the beneficiary didn't know how much that they will get that day. So just like, it's like big potential corruption. It's from that kind of point. So of course, the other things are also, even though it's digitized, maybe you also aware during the Pak Jokowi era also, several high-level officials also involved in the corruption, like even in the minister level, and now he went to the jail for this kind of social protection programs. But still, it's like he tried to reduce the potential of corruption, but not 100% can avoid this kind of corruption. But the good things is also when we design this kind of solutions, the Anti-Corruption Watch and the KPK, the Indonesia, they would like to understand what is the new solution that they would like to introduce. So they would like to know also the process, the mechanism. So by having said that, so it's more trying to be more transparent, if I may say, and try to reduce the potential corruption.
Thanks, Pak Gilman. You mentioned in your talk a very good the issues of digital readiness, digital literacy. Particularly in those areas of Indonesia that are very isolated before, how much more acute those issues are, particularly where it covers sorts of services in health, agriculture, extension, that perhaps financially based social protection services, if you like. How those things can be delivered to poor villages and so on.
Yeah, this is the toughest part of Indonesia. It's like island countries and also not 100% covered by digital infrastructure. Talking one example for the telecommunication support, telecommunication access, like network access, internet access, still not 100% covered in the overall country. So in these regions, somehow the government still using the traditional method in this regard. So it's not fully digitized. So in the specific region that the government aware that this region is not ready, the infrastructure is not ready, the people not ready, so it's still using the traditional access, traditional mechanism. So somehow they're not currently it's not still challenges, so it's not digitized yet in that area. So waiting for the infrastructure is ready and literacy of the people ready, and government will do it in the next phase.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I was just wondering from the pilot projects, was there any finding on the impact of the leakage rate or the take-up rate?
Impact of what, sorry?
So the leakage rate or the take-up rate in terms of like whether it reached the leakage in terms of like it didn't reach the ultra or the take-up, meaning like more people take-up.
Thank you. The pilot project itself, when we design the pilot, it's not focusing on the beneficiary selection, if this in this regards. So of course, if like inclusion errors, exclusion errors, when the government selecting beneficiary still there. But the pilot project that I mentioned here, mostly only focusing on the digital solutions. But when we're selecting the beneficiaries, at that time, the government did like 2 type of checking points. Number one is like using the database that already exists, like DTKS. The second one is discussing with the village officer or village officers to ensure whether this guy is still still need to get the social protection, whether they're still alive. Somehow maybe they already passed away, so we don't know. So it's like only this kind of 2 checking. So the challenge for having like the sophisticated in terms of the beneficiaries target in a selection, still a big homework, if I may say, for Indonesia, because like updating the beneficiaries data still need to be digitized. So even though now we don't know whether they're still alive or they move to somewhere else, not live there in that region anymore. So that kind of things is one of the next digitized in terms of the beneficiaries database and also how to update it.
Okay, so we're going to have 2 questions from online and 1 from the audience.
Okay, so the first question comes from William Wijaya. He asks about, has Indonesia implemented the entire component of social protection digitization architecture that is presented today? Okay, and then the second is from Pian Mukhtar. Does the digitalization affect the beneficiary spending behavior? Specifically, do they save more? What kind of consumption they change due to the digitalization? Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of the system, the digitized solutions, the combo card is there. If you remember the combo card, the debit card based for several social protection programs is already there. It's already implemented until today. It's already there. It's used for delivering the PKH, the Family Welfare Program, and also for the food assistance, the food aid programs, for buying some specific food in the shops. Is using this kind of debit card approach, or maybe cashing out the money using debit card. So debit card is there. The next one is like the NFC, no, not implemented. The NFC, the near field communication, like tap, not implemented yet. Mobile money? No, it's not for Indonesia because it's difficulties of people still have difficulties in transaction using their own cell phone, especially low income people. It's not implemented. Biometric authentications. The biometric now implemented in one of the program, which is the Prakerja. So when the project management office of Prakerja appointed the service providers to disburse these funds, so the service providers need to ensure liveness, the biometric authentications, meaning when you enroll, you need to hold your the ID card of the people and it take a selfie. So ID card with face. So they need to check the ID card face is correct. And also now, since 2020, also implemented the liveness detections. Because even though you're doing this and this, when I was working for Gojek, because we are also one of the service providers for disbursing these programs, the fraud is quite high. So because Indonesia, I don't know, this is maybe an Indonesia-centric case, people like to publish everything at the social media, even the ID card. Hey, I have ID card, this is my ID card. So your ID card can be like, if available in social media, it could be potential of the fraudsters. They take your the picture of the ID card, and there's a picture there, the bottom on the right side. There's a picture. You just crop the picture, try to using the technology, like using the software, like looks like picture and card. Because the enrollment process was using the technology like manual checking. It's like if this one and this one is same in terms of the ensuring the 2D checking, it's approved. But we found out that the fraud is too high. So finally, they implemented the liveness detection. So during the enrollment, still the same face in this one, and you should do like additional things like the apps, like you should do something like the app will say, now blink your eyes, or now smiling, or now turn left. It's only one program's now implemented this initiative. The others are like not yet.
Yeah, I guess that's the second question asking about whether the consumption,
the spending
pattern change.
The pattern change, I'm not quite sure. But the things that we need to ensure now, when the government is like I can say like the case of the food subsidy, before it's like only cash. When we provided cash, usually to the head of the family, so the findings was the most of the beneficiaries are the head of the family, which is the father or husband. On the spending, usually they can buy anything with that money in terms of cash. So like they can buy cigarettes and everything. But once it's like converted into vouchers, electronic vouchers in this regard, so it's like locked. The system can lock. So you cannot buy cigarettes. You only can buy food-related things at the commercial shops. So it's like ensuring that only buy the food. So this kind of improvement. But like other potential things like that I can see in terms of the spending, I'm not aware of like other examples in this regards. So maybe other studies or
because probably one of the goals was to increase inclusion in savings, whether that translated to in practice. That probably was the question. Whether there's deposit left at the wallet.
So in terms of the savings, no, honestly speaking, not so many things, because they need money. I tried to had a discussion with the bank, one of the service providers. They said once the money disbursed, almost at the same day, or at least like within 1 week, gone. They need the money. So this is like also the challenges for the bank, how to ensure the sustainability of this kind of mechanism. Because when the government appointed the banks, the government didn't put any costs or fees for the banks. So they need to manage the system, they need to manage the cash out points and everything. So this is another challenge that came up after the digitized system.
Yes, thank you very much for the talk. In couple of your early slides, you emphasised the importance of reporting, monitoring, evaluation. I'm guessing one of the advantages of digitalisation would be to improve evaluation, that is, speed it up and perhaps make it more accurate. I'm just wondering, have the pilot programs incorporated KPIs on outputs and outcomes, and what's been the experience?
Thank you for the questions. So yes, in terms of the reporting, monitoring and evaluation is like improved, if I may say. So now the government can see like specific region. So for instance, government have already aware how many beneficiaries, how many budget allocated for this region. So they can get like the informed during this reporting process, like from the service provider, how many already disbursed in terms of percentage. So if it's like 100% dispersed until this specific date, so the money should return to the government. So this one is improved. The second one is also potential in terms of the monitoring and evaluation. So this kind of also things like government can have like additional data, like real-time data. So it's like easier for government to conduct the study based on the specific program. So meaning, oh, if there's a programs like 100%, what is the in which region is like not dispersed 100%? Maybe what is the problem? Whether the beneficiaries is not there anymore. What are other potential problems that can give an input for the improvement? And the KPI is the government, the implementing agencies or implementing ministries, they have their own KPI, like ensuring the disbursement, ensuring the beneficiaries, and also not to forget the corruption, the mechanism that happening in these ministries or in this agency. So every process is like audited by the audit agencies in Indonesia, both from the Indonesian internal audit agencies, also external audit agencies by the government. So now it's like more feasible and also flexible, if you may say, because the data is already there. Just check the data and also can ask what is the problems and sort of what is the potential future improvement for increasing this kind of mechanism in the future. Yeah.
Let's open for another question from the audience here. Anya. I have a question, and then one online.
Yeah, thank you, Mas Iwan, for the comprehensive presentation. I think I've got two questions. First, where do you see this? Where's the part where actually the beneficiaries or the recipient themselves have any role in the design itself? Like, because when we talk about digital solution, is it? Because for me, it sounds like it's a solution for the government to simplify, to reduce corruptions. But where's the part where it's actually, it's people focused, that, it's taking into consideration the feedback from the beneficiaries? Can you exemplify or illustrate that? And the second thing, do you think COVID-19 actually reverse a lot of this reform? Because as you can see in the last few years, because you show Jokowi with the cards, but if you see, election campaign now, it's all back to cash. So like, we can't overlook that kind of aspect. So in a way, I feel like it's actually, we turn into digital, but at the end of the day, back to cash. And for political reasons, it's just giving out cash was much easier. And secondly, in terms of like now, since there's Badan Pangan that's newly established in the last few years, so it's all back to like providing assistance using this commodity instead of like cash itself. So what's your overall observations? Like, do you think the reform has actually reversed like COVID and the last few years?
Yeah, thank you, Fania. Yeah, first the roles of beneficiaries during this reform. The insight from beneficiaries, if specific on the digitalization, so digital solution is like try to understand their problems. So for instance, cell phone, it's not happening in Indonesia. Even we tested, even it's successful in Africa, like mobile money, like transfers through the mobile numbers, transaction using the cell phone, successful in Africa, but in Indonesia, no, it's not successful. It's very hard at that time, the government need to implement this kind of solutions in Indonesia. So the challenge is like, first, the beneficiaries are not ready for this kind of digital solution. So they give insights, oh, this one is not ready. So the second one is also the digital solution. We try to understand what is the real needs of beneficiaries. What is the mechanism that really familiar for them? So in Indonesia, back again for this, debit card is like almost of the Indonesian understand about debit card. At least they know, oh, this is debit card on my bank. I can do something with this if I go to the bank, ATM. And also the spread wise of the ATM in the country is quite good. So if we compare to Africa, in Africa, the spread of the ATM is not so good. So they don't have any option. So that's why they introduced the mobile money at that time. So that's why the beneficiaries are there push using the cell phone. But Indonesia already have an options. Banks already there, ATMs already there, bank branches already there, cooperatives even already there in the rural areas. But now they need to change the cell phone. It's difficult. And other things like problem for the cell phone, we found out like when you're using at that time the solution using the USSD, like usually like put the number *55 and hash, and it's only like have a cap limit of the transactions. Like when you are accessing the system, it's only like 1 or 2 minutes. If the drop of the network drop, then the beneficiary start again from the beginning. And also every time accessing USSD at that time, it was a price like 100 rupiah once you access the USSD. For some of the people, it's like too expensive, even they don't have money inside their cell phone for calling or for paying this kind of services. So therefore, the cell phone they give an insights to the government in terms of what will be the best solutions that Indonesia can implement for them. So when we're talking about the COVID-19, during the COVID-19, my observation was it was quite advanced in Indonesia, even though in some part, especially maybe in the big cities or in urban areas, the integrated system was there. Like for instance, government delivering the money directly to the electronic money account, and then the beneficiaries can buy directly what kind of foods that they need from the e-commerce, like using smartphone, receive the money, buy the money, and also deliver the money, deliver the benefit directly to their home. Because in Indonesia, the e-commerce platform is already integrated. E-commerce platform, the sellers, payment, and also delivery is already there. So the government was using this kind of channels in disbursing the benefits using the COVID-19. So, but somehow now it's like, yeah, it's back again. When back to normal, this kind of initiative is not existed anymore. Now back to the normal disbursement using the previously before the COVID-19 the approach. It's also like having like several things like the new leaders comes, like new ministry come, maybe he or he has like new initiative. So maybe he also or she has also he also have like idea or solutions that he or she believe that could be the good things for the country. So this is not a challenge, like having like political support for implementing the solution. And about the back to commodity, yes, this is like the things because several frauds like report happening about the problems in delivering cash. So this kind of things like giving an insights may be better to have like the back to the commodity based supports. And also maybe the other challenge from the other challenge or insight from the service provider itself, like we already have like this kind of badan or agency for managing the food. How about not using it? They did now they don't have anything, like maybe they need to be more responsible to implement this kind of thing through the social protection programs. If we may aware that during the rice subsidy, the rice delivery, like before it's like digitized, it's like Indonesia is like securing the rice supply and everything under this one of agency and disbursing this rice in kind to the beneficiaries. But somehow it's like, yeah, it's like benefits there, challenges there, and also when digitized, also the same benefits there, challenges there, and back again. How about the policy from the political support and also the leaders of the country, whether they would like to support this or back to support the digitization or back to the before digitization. Let's see what's happening in the next future.
Okay. So yeah, I have a question, and my first question is very close to Vanya. Question about with all this digitization, you expect more transparency and less use of social assistance for political purpose. And as you may have known, in the last election, this has become an issue where bansos being delivered very close to the election. And I think one of the audience also posed this question. So yeah, your view on that. The second one, with all these advances and all biometric data stored, and on the other hand, we know the data privacy and security issues are still big issues in Indonesia. How do you see that in the future? I mean, should we take a pause, ensuring those securities are in place, or yeah, or should we just move forward?
Yep. Thank you, Firman, for the questions. Yep. The delivery during the election, I think Indonesia is not the only country like using social protection programs as the potential potential channels are also using it before the elections. We believe in other countries also do the same. But the good things is like once it needs to be disbursed, like the several stages of approval should be there. So like approval from the implementing agencies, implementing ministries, and up to approval from the president. So maybe this is my view. Maybe at the time as also maybe you can link it. It's like before the election, but maybe in another perspective also Indonesia see maybe this is the time because the people need food. Indonesia had problems with rice supply at the time, and also increasement of the rice price at the time. So maybe it's like coincidence, if I may say. But somehow it's like if there is something like related to election, yeah, maybe could be related. But I believe that government also have like other reasons why they need to deliver this kind of programs at that time. Of course, the Ministry of Finance have something to say, right? Because it's like in her like approval before the money is like dispersed, and also implementing ministries and also up to the president. So it's like, yeah, it could be part of the agenda. But I believe government have like good reasons in delivering this on time at that time. So the next one is about the advances and also the data privacy issues. My last discussion with the Indonesian government, the main challenge is the people, the officials that operating this kind of digital systems. Indonesian government said we can buy anything. We can allocate budget to buy the most advanced digital solutions in the world, the most advanced digital providers, but we don't have the people to operate it. So this kind of like still like the problems in Indonesia, potential for data breaches, potential for other cybersecurity risks and everything. Now the government try to upskilling other people, and not to forget also some like people moving from the different departments inside the government, also like another problems in Indonesia. So like internal problems is like skill problems in digitalization.
Okay, so online, let's go to online first and then like go online.
So this is question from Data Paramadita. Since the digitalization has started in 2014, is there any study how the social protection program improve financial inclusion and literacy, especially for the poor and the vulnerable? The second one is from Serafina Devita. Which key actors or institutions should collaborate closely to enable this digitalized social protection initiative? And how is the current state of their interrelations based on your observations? Thank you, Mas Firman. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the question. First about the study and also from 2014 and also increasing the financial inclusion index. So I did a research paper for this one based on since the government implemented the non-cash disbursement in 2016, in 2017 and 2018, based on the survey of the Financial Services Authority, like the financial inclusion index of Indonesia like just increased because of most of the people have access. Since then, most of the people have access to the formal financial services, which is the disbursement using the savings account, the debit card, the combo card. And also, I believe, I'm not aware about the other studies, but I believe the Indonesia also have like this kind of, there is one, they call it the National Dewan Nasional Keuangan Inklusif, like the agency for focusing on the financial inclusion in the country. So I believe they have several studies there. So usually in Indonesia, the studies are conducted by the several institutions like universities, local universities, or maybe the international institutions like led by the World Bank and other ADB and other things. There are a lot of studies that seeing this kind of impact of the financial inclusion in terms of the financial inclusion, in terms of the financial inclusion for the poor. The next one is about the collaboration. So based on my understanding, Indonesia is like top-down approach. So now, if we see the current plan for integrating the system, integrating the ministries for several programs, so like there should be like the led by the highest level of the government, like the collaborations should be like happening now among ministries, how the ministries can share data in this regards, the data from the social affairs, the data from home affairs, the data from other ministries that implementing social protection programs, so they can share the data, and hopefully in the future, once they can integrate the data, and also they can design more sophisticated programs. The second thing is also the availability, collaboration with broader service providers. So maybe not only banks in Indonesia, banks maybe can approach like specific segments. So maybe some segments prefer to other solutions, to other service providers. So in Indonesia now, maybe you're aware that we Indonesia have really happening in electronic money, like GoPay, paying using that kind of things, OVO, that kind of solutions. So maybe specific beneficiaries could prefer to using this kind of things. So opening broader providers is the next one. The next things is also the collaboration with the research institution, universities, and also technology providers in terms of like advocating what will be the next, what will be, how the implementation will work in Indonesia in the future.
Okay, thank you, Om Zulman. I'm Yahya, master student here. So I'm curious about one thing, that's data accuracy. So you mentioned several times about the data. First of all, we know that recent social ministry found maybe around 1 million like inaccuracy in data in the DTKS, and she claims wants to build like super DTKS, which is more accurate. But I'm not sure of the roadmap. So also we have a challenge in silo culture in our government, which is like exacerbate the data inaccuracies. So how about will the future roadmap to strengthen the data will address this issue, like you mentioned in the presentation, and will the digitalization involve in that future roadmap to enhance the data? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for the questions. Yes, data accuracy is crucial, but if you can flashback about the DTKS, when the government collected the data, it's collected like manually. So the government need to go to every houses in Indonesia since beginning, like collected the data like census. If we talk about census, it's like very expensive, understanding about Indonesia. So the challenge is like how to updating it. So the challenge is updating it. So I can see like the initiatives should be involved should involve the digital solutions in this regards, because the back to the current conditions, the updating still be manually. So meaning like the local officers in the village level, they need to conduct the checking, and also like stages from the village or the district or to the province up to the central. Like this is what is like updating the data. So once it's like potential, we somehow also the potential fraud happening. Like the previously we found out like in the beginning, like 2014, like if I'm the officials like collecting the data, I just put my family member to be part of the beneficiaries. There's no cross checking whether this is the eligible beneficiaries. So the things is like the digital solutions can have like for sure she will like introduce this kind of solution. I'm not fully aware about the roadmap, but one of the ideas is like using this kind of solutions in advancing the administration process of the data collection, data checking, and also up to updating the data of the beneficiaries. So I believe it should be linked with the potential digital solutions for the future improvement.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, my question is similar to it, yeah, because like as you said that Indonesia is already adapting the digital literacy and digital readiness for the society and in this context for the beneficiaries. And I want to ask about how about like government readiness for the digital, kind of like for the digital of social protection, because like as you mentioned earlier that we have to government of Indonesia have to reduce inclusion and exclusion error. And what's Indonesian readiness, Indonesian government readiness?
Yep. So like embracing the readiness is like, I can say like they need to open to the potential new solutions in this regard. Maybe the challenge is like every time I was in I was supporting the government like 2 terms when so the challenge is like when the first government came, so usually the new leaders there. So the challenge is how to educate them about the current progress and how to ensure they are open for the new innovative solutions. So that's the challenge inside the government. So the readiness is also, the government should expect that the officials should open for any new ideas and also open-minded for the new solutions, digital solutions. These kind of things could be like the solutions, because my personal experience, like educating them is like takes time. Like 2 ministers come, maybe he or she has own agenda. So we need to say this updating the progress, updating the solution, and also maybe the one level hierarchy also have their own agenda, and also we need to like synchronizing, like having like discussion, educating them, and also like come up with the potential solution that ensuring that what will be the best for Indonesia. So that's that could be like the challenge every time the new cabinet come in leading the country.
Any more questions? Okay, one final question.
I have a question. I have a quick question to the previous questions. So, in recent years, has the DTKS improved in terms of the accuracy of targeting the beneficiaries? And has digitization helped reduce the inclusion and exclusion errors in recent years?
Okay, thanks for the questions. Honestly, I'm not fully aware about the DTKS itself, but I believe my view is like government tried to improve it and also try to push it to be the single source of database for the beneficiaries of social protection. So in this regards, I can say like the supporting regulation is there, like to use DTKS as the source of information for the beneficiaries. In terms of the digitalization, the centralized DTKS is there. The hardware, the centralized database is there in the country, and also managed and led by the specific ministry. And also it's open if any other programs need information about the DTKS. Like now it's like more like the connecting to this database is like easier, if I may say, through this digitalization process, like accessing the DTKS. Of course, it's like several approvals and from several officials are still needed. The next thing is like the future DTKS. I believe this could be still the government. I believe still would like to have like centralized database. Whether we'll use this DTKS in the future or maybe would like to advance in other terms, other mechanism or other databases. But the idea is like one database, single database. Maybe you also aware that Indonesia have like the Indonesia have like the policy with single data, the one data. So I believe this one could be one of the potential options, potential solution for DTKS to be one single data for overall social protection programs in the country.
Okay, that's the final question. And again, thank you so much for your talk, for the audience in person and online. You had a very good talk today. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.